Ghosts, goblins, and ghouls beware, for the black cat is everywhere, stalking quietly in the shadows, counting down the moments to the witching hour with each step. A distant shriek echoes through the cool night air. Something brushes past your leg and sends a shiver up your spine. Deep in the library of this haunted hilltop house, a candle burns late this evening, for he is seeking the answers to the questions that time forgot, and telling twisted tales of terror and mystification sure to keep you awake all night. Now, the clock strikes midnight, and here is Black Cat.
Greetings, viewer. I wish I could say I was surprised to see you, but I knew you'd be here. Tonight, we're taking a look at different types of extrasensory perception, or ESP. Most forms of parapsychology fall under the term pseudoscience simply because we do not have enough scientific evidence to support the abilities that some people have. Tonight, I've selected one of my books on parapsychology. Let's start with the chapter on ESP, shall we? ESP is the faculty of perceiving things by means other than the known senses: sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing. There are many different topics that fit under the heading of extrasensory perception. Telepathy, for instance, is the supposed communication of thoughts or ideas by means other than the known senses. General telepathy tends to cover a number of facets, including mediumship and astral projection. Mediumship is the practice of certain people known as mediums to purportedly mediate communication between spirits of the dead and living human beings. Mediums use extra senses to communicate with spirits, such as clairvoyance, the supposed faculty of perceiving things or events in the future or beyond normal sensory contact, potentially with guidance from a spirit. These messages from the other side may take the form of precognition, a foreknowledge of an event, especially foreknowledge of a paranormal kind; remote viewing, the ability to see and give information about an object, person, event, or location that is hidden from the viewer's sight and located some distance away; or retrocognition, the knowledge of past events which could not have been learned or inferred by normal means. This ability may randomly manifest itself to people who didn't realize they had it. This may be a possible explanation for time slips. Then there's also clairsentience, which is the ability to obtain information, most likely by feeling what a spirit felt either emotionally or by feeling physical ailments. A medium may be able to find a spirit's cause of death from feeling where they may have been injured or had medical problems before they died. Psychometry, the supposed ability to discover facts about an event or person by touching inanimate objects associated with them, is also closely related to clairsentience. There is also clairgustance, the ability to obtain taste information from a paranormal source. Very similar to clairaudience, the ability to receive psychic information through physically smelling. Since the sense of smell is the strongest link to memory, it's no wonder some spirits may choose to communicate in this way. Clairaudience, the ability to obtain information via paranormal auditory means, not to be confused with EVP or another recorded phenomena. This only pertains to hearing voices at the time of the incident, either by physically hearing them or from hearing them inside of the medium's head. It's one thing to communicate with the spirits of the dead, but what about beings from other dimensions or other planets? Astral projection uses the idea that humans have the ability to willfully have an out-of-body experience and to travel in the astral plane in an astral form. Remote viewing is often tied to astral projection due to the supposed ability to travel anywhere the person projecting desires. Once in the astral plane, you may encounter spirit guides who wish to help you, but there may also be lower energy beings who wish to do you harm. I personally believe that all entities you encounter while astral projecting are manifestations of one's own mind. However, that doesn't make it any less terrifying, as we'll soon learn in my selection of terrifying true tales about astral projection and other psychic phenomena. For the last 3 or 4 days, I've been doing a lot of research about astral projection. I've downloaded guided meditations to help me get outside my body. I've listened to that twice with no luck. I got a light tingling and a sort of upward motion, but that's it. I know I'm new at this and it'll take a lot of practice, but this morning I had an extremely terrifying experience. My husband and I were lying in bed asleep and the phone rang. He answered, and I heard the voice on the other end confirming his appointment for Monday. He hung up the phone and stayed in bed a few minutes. Then I had a thought of standing at the top of the stairs at his dad's house. His dad recently passed away, so no one's living there now, but many people have had weird experiences in that house. It was like I was standing there at the top of the steps between the bedrooms. At the same time, the whole left side of my head started this really intense tingling. The only way I can describe it is like your arm has been asleep for a long while, and when the blood rushes back through, you get the tingling, needle-pricking feeling. In my quick thought of just being at the top of the stairs, I felt scared and started to run to the room on the left, where we slept when we were there. Then it dawned on me that with this tingling I may be trying to astral project, and there was no way I wanted to be in that house when I left my body. I thought, oh no, I don't want to be here. So I concentrated on my body lying in bed. The intense tingling was really uncomfortable, and I was trying to ease it off, but it was spreading quickly all over my body. It was overwhelming. Then, all of a sudden, it was like someone grabbed me by my ankles and was lifting my legs up. I didn't like the feeling of a presence with me, because somehow I could feel it was from that house. I had this strong feeling that this thing was from there. I was trying to fight it, and I couldn't. Then it felt like I was being pulled off the bed. It felt like an entity was trying to pull me out of my body, and I could feel it saying, "Come on and let go, because this is what you wanted." And I was fighting back. Not like this. Not with you. I remembered my husband was still lying in the bed, and I tried to grab him with my left hand. I couldn't feel him at all. It was like he wasn't there, but I knew he was. There was a really loud buzzing noise in my ears now. The feeling all over my body was so intense, and I was terrified by this, and the thing that had a hold of me. Then, I could feel the bed moving a little as my husband got up. I was trying so hard to scream, to move my body, anything to get his attention so he could help me, but I just couldn't. He walked on by me, not knowing what was happening. All I could do was try to stay in my body and fight this thing trying to pull me out. I was kicking and thrashing when I heard the bedroom door close, and all of a sudden, my ankles were free. But this thing had now grabbed onto my chest. It jerked me up and we flew across the room. We hit the wall by the door, but it didn't hurt. It didn't even feel like we hit anything. I stopped and fell down and realized this thing had went through the wall and let go of me. The next thing I knew, I was back at my body, trying to wake myself up. I kept telling myself, wake up now, and I could feel this presence coming close to me. Then, I remembered the loving white light and started surrounding myself with it. The presence faded out and was gone. I was still very tingly, and the buzzing noise was calming down. I couldn't move yet, though. It took a couple of minutes before I was able to move my fingers, but slowly, the rest of my body followed. When I could, I got up and wrote it all down, because I didn't want to forget the details of it. I don't know what to say about this experience, except that I didn't like it at all. I want to astral project, but not like that. I don't want to be pulled out by someone, and definitely not a dark energy. I will, however, continue to explore this subject and see what happens. What a wild feeling it was, being pulled outside of my own body. I've been practicing projection for 6 years now, and though I've had some wonderful experiences, I've also had some of the most terrifying. I'm aware that the astral plane works in real time. I'm aware that my thoughts and feelings can create and manifest in the astral plane. I clarify this because this is usually the reasoning I get when speaking up about the issue. I'm sure there have been times that I've not been in the right mindset for projection, but certainly not every time this has happened to me. I truly believe there has to be more to it. That being said, perhaps I should clarify that I also have recurring nightmares, usually all of the same type. Always the same nightmare. I do not know if this could affect my mind when projecting. One of the most unique experiences I had was years ago. I found myself drifting from that state of complete awake and awareness into sleep. When I tried to open my eyes, I immediately knew that I had opened my astral eyes and not my physical eyes. The very first thing I saw was a man hovering over me. He looked mostly human, except for his smile. His smile quite literally reached from ear to ear. His teeth appeared to be pointed, and he looked so incredibly, evilly happy. It was something you'd see on the face of the Joker. He was bald, and had his eyes fixed with his hands hovering, palms down, over my stomach. He looked very satisfied with himself, or me, or both. I feel I began to sit up slightly at this point because his eyes darted from my solar plexus over to my face, and probably my wide, fearful stare. Immediately, his smile turned to the most evil scowl I'd ever seen, and he lunged at my face with his hands outstretched for my throat. This scared me so much I literally threw myself back into my body and came fully awake, sitting in my bed. This was years ago, and to this day, I have extremely bad and debilitating stomach problems. I have been to doctors more times than I can count, and they cannot figure out what's wrong, or why I experience stomach pains and nausea every day of my life. Quite literally every day. On another occasion, I very gracefully float away from my body one night. Peace on my brain and light in my heart. I walk out into the main room of my house and out my front door. As I start outside, I look to my left and see a very tall, hooded figure in a black robe, standing with its back to me and facing my house. Its face is almost touching the wall. Its shoulders were hunched, and it swayed back and forth over and over. I felt uneasy immediately. As if it sensed me, it whirled around and started to come towards me. It had a way of floating about it, as I saw no feet or legs, but watched it come closer nonetheless. I felt more confident at this moment because in my mind, I felt like I knew why it was here. I felt like it was feeding off the energy around my home. The way it swayed and kept its head down made me feel like it was taking something from the energy here. I felt the overwhelming confidence of needing to protect my home and my daughter, and put my hands out in front of me, palms out. I visualized bright energy flowing from my fingertips towards this being. I watched the bright light flow out of my hands like water at him. This seemed to work at first because it began to float backwards, but then, as if to call my bluff, it changed again and came at me fast. I got so scared that in my head I said, "God, please help me." And I was immediately and precisionally lifted out of that place. I felt myself rise up and soar upwards, and then found myself in bed and out of harm's way. These are only 2 stories out of the 5 or so years of regular astral traveling. There are many more, some similar, and some that were very clearly either my own manifestations or harmless but unfriendly astral entities that try to scare you off. In those cases, it's usually very easy for me to get the point across to them and send them on their way. But something about these other experiences is different. I almost feel as if I'm targeted or sought out. I am part Mayan Indian, and I have been a psychic since birth. so my entire life has been filled with very unusual experiences. One day, my friend Don was visiting me at my home and stayed overnight. I awoke very early the next morning, even though we had chatted until about 2 a.m. the previous evening, and on my way to the shower, I passed by the bedroom in which he slept. Since he had left his door open, I couldn't help but notice that he was trembling so violently in his sleep that the entire bed was shaking. At breakfast, I asked Don why he shook so much in his sleep. He said, "I don't know, but it has been a most difficult problem because I have never had one single good night's rest in my lifetime." After his departure, I recalled a past life of his in which he was brutally murdered in his sleep. This trauma, still locked in his subconscious, was causing him great terror of sleeping deeply. I felt that I should share this insight with him, and he responded, "You are a deranged woman," and angrily departed. I believed I would never see him again. Surprise! About 8 weeks later, he returned to thank me, saying, "I have slept peacefully ever since you revealed my past life experience to me." My psychic experience is one I will never forget because I recorded the time. 4:17 a.m. The event involved the son of one of my dearest friends, a young man who was as close to me as my own son. On December 23rd, around 4 a.m., I opened the door for my daughter who was coming home from work. I was still up because I never go to sleep until very late. I went back to the bedroom, turned out the light, and settled down. All of a sudden, I heard a horrible crashing sound coming from the right-hand corner of the ceiling. I looked up and saw a long, big silver box with red on top of it floating across the room. Dark figures walked beside it. Around 8:30 that morning, my daughter came into my bedroom crying, "Mother, Kevin was killed this morning around 5:30 a.m. in a car wreck." We were all torn apart. I didn't think of my vision again until I went to the funeral home. His mother and I were standing in front of the casket, talking and crying, when I said, "That's what I heard and saw." I realized the silver was the casket, the dark figures were the pallbearers, and the red was the U.S. flag draped across the casket. The noise I had heard was the crashing car. I had seen the incident 1 hour and 13 minutes before it happened.
Thank you for tuning in this evening. I want to give a special thank you to Mr. Sinister for narrating my intro. Please check out his channel if you haven't done so already. And join me in my library next Friday at midnight. And remember, horror hounds, keep it creepy.